Me if I forgot. Right, so let's now do break-even analysis with multiple products. You'll see that most businesses, they don't sell one product. So in this regard, we would want to do a break-even analysis for a business that is selling multiple products. So for your third level, this is what you expect at third level. You expect to do questions that have got 2 or more products. That's basically most of our questions, 2, 3 products for third level. So when you are calculating the break-even point, when we sell different products, all with different costs, all with different costs and selling price, we use the weighted, there are other people here. So that's there. We use the weighted average contribution. What is this weighted average contribution? The weighted average contribution is your sales mix. The sales mix, we are talking of the contribution of each product to the sales of the organization. That is going to be your sales mix. So which means we are going to weight your contribution based on sales mix for each product, so that we have one figure here under the weighted average contribution. So it's going to be our fixed cost over weighted average contribution. I think there's something down there that we are going to use to. So when you are calculating break-even point for multiple products, this is what you should do in the exam. And in your third level exam, when you are calculating the break-even point for multiple products, you do calculations first. So in your calculations, you can take N1 as calculation number 1. The first thing is to determine the total cost. So which means in the question, you should calculate the total cost. So your total cost will be your calculation number 1. You will look at the cost, total fixed cost in the question, then a total cost in the question. Then you will now calculate them. And you should show them in your calculations when you submit for marking. So which means the first thing that you do is to have the calculations. Then when you have your total fixed cost, then you go and determine the sales mix. The sales mix is the proportion in which products and services are sold. For example, if they say 20, 50, 30. So that is going to be your sales mix. Let's say this is product A, product B, and product C. So which means your sales mix is going to be here. When it is like this, is easy. You can just cancel these zeros. Then you are going to say my sales mix is going to be 2:5, 3. That's your sales mix, the one that you are going to use here. So which means when you determine your sales mix, you are going to look at the sale of each product. Then you express that one as a percentage or as a ratio. Even if you want to do it as a percentage here, it's still fine. It's going to be 20, over 100, which is going to be 0. Which is going to be 0. What? 0.2. Then this one is going to be 0.5. This one is going to be 0.3. So that is your sales mix. A sales mix is a proportion in which products and services are sold. So in your question, if the company is selling 3 products, then you should look at product A, how much sales, product B, how much sales, product C, how much sales. So that's where you are going to get your sales mix. That's how you determine the sales mix, which means you now express this one as percentages or as ratios. When we express them as ratios, you reduce them to the lowest term. If you want to express them as ratios like this, which means you must reduce them to a point where you cannot divide much further. So that is your sales mix. So in your calculation, it means you must have your total fixed cost calculation, then your sales mix. In some of the questions, they might provide you with a sales mix, but if the sales mix is not there, then you need to determine the sales mix. Then your calculation number 3 is going to be calculate the contribution per unit for each product. Remember, when we come here, the reason why we want the contribution per unit per each product, when you come here, you have your fixed cost. Then your weighted average contribution is going to be contribution times sales mix of product A plus contribution times sales mix of product B plus contribution times sales mix of product C. Then you have your weighted average contribution, right? So which means when you are doing these questions in the exam or a test, you should have 3 calculations: determine the total fixed cost, determine the sales mix, calculate the contribution per unit of each product. Contribution is going to be selling price minus variable cost. That is going to be your contribution. Selling price minus variable cost is going to be your contribution, right? Then after that now, this is where you now have to calculate the weighted average contribution by adding the weighted contribution for all products. So which means you should calculate the weighted contribution for each product using this formula. When you are calculating the weighted contribution for each product, you use this formula. It's going to be your sales mix times your contribution per unit. So which means your number 2 and 3 are going to give you the weighted contribution. Then when you are done, you divide fixed costs by weighted average contribution. So which means when you are done with all this, you just come to your formula and you say fixed cost over weighted average contribution. Then you submit your figures there. Right? So that's there. So I want us to look at this question together. They say the organization is offering 3 products. The following estimates have been prepared for the following year. We have 3 products here. We have electric lawnmower, petrol, lawnmower, and garden services. So these guys have got 3 products. So we are provided with the selling price, the variable cost, directly fixed cost, and common fixed cost. Then we are provided with the expected sales mix, which is 3-2-1. Then we are required to calculate the break-even number of the following. We are required to calculate the break-even number of the following: electric lawnmowers, petrol lawnmowers, and garden service. We want the break-even number of these. There are 3 products. So when you are answering this kind of a question in the exam, wherever you are answering, you come here. The first thing is to do your calculations. Determine total fixed cost. Determine the sales mix. Calculate the contribution per unit for each product. Then you can now come here and calculate the weighted average contribution by adding the weighted contribution for all products. Then you can now just finish off by dividing fixed cost by weighted average contribution. So that's basically how you answer this kind of a question. And it's one of those questions which is always waiting for us in the exam, that when you are answering this question, they want us to calculate the break-even number. So which means where you start is you just have to do is activity 5. Right? They want us to calculate the break-even point. So which means we have to come to this formula. Fixed cost over weighted average contribution. I always prefer you guys, when you are answering a question, start with your formula so that you don't get confused. Break-even point is equal to fixed cost over weighted average contribution. Right, when you have your formula, I always prefer to have the formula. Why? Because once I know the formula, then what I'm going to do here is to do the calculations. So which means I now go and do my calculations now. These calculations must go together with your answer. If you don't provide these calculations, it means on that question you are going to get a 0. So the first calculation that we need is determine, but there is no order for calculations. You are not forced to put them in any order. You can start with anyone here. So let's start with the calculations. We can have calculation number 1, total fixed cost. Right, in our total fixed cost, we have common and direct. So we have direct. Then we have common. So we are going to have how much here? In our common fixed cost and direct, we have 15,000 plus 810,000. So it's going to be 810 and 15,000. How much are we going to have all in all?
825,000.
825,000.
Yes.
So this is our calculation number one for fixed costs. We are done. Then we can now go to calculation number two, the sales mix. The sales mix is, I think we are provided. We have 3, 2, 1, electric lawnmower, petrol lawnmower, garden service. So our sales mix is equal to 3, 2, 1. Then you should just show that it's given. Then our working number 3. What are we going to do on number 3? We are going to calculate the contribution per unit, Mara. So we need the contribution per unit. Your contribution, we have 3. We have electric, petrol, and garden service. So let me just do working 3 here. So working 3 is contribution. Is contribution per unit. Contribution per unit is equal to selling price minus variable cost. That's your contribution per unit. So here we have 3 products. We have electric, then we have petrol, then we have garden service. We have petrol lawnmower. So when you are calculating your contribution, it's obvious that you need your selling price less variable cost. So that you can have a contribution. So we go to the question and look at the selling price for each product. The selling price per electric lawnmower is 2,000, 2,500, and 250. So we just come here. It's 2,000, 2,500, and garden service is 250. Then the variable cost. The variable cost per unit is 850, 1,100. So which means we just come here and say 850 is the variable cost here. 1,000 is the variable cost here. 100 is the variable cost here. So once we have these variable costs, the next thing is our contribution. So what is going to be the contribution here?
1,150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150. 11150
1,150. Then here is 1,500. Then here it's 150. Yes. So this is going to be our contribution. When we have our contribution, then it means you go to number 4. You now need to calculate the weighted average contribution. So here you can just come here and say we have the sales mix 3, 2, 1. We have our contribution 1,150, 1,500, and 150. So you can now do the weighted contribution. The weighted contribution, you can even use it here. You can do it here in your answer. So here you can now come and say our total fixed cost is how much? We said it's how much here? 825,000. So you can just come here and say is equal to 825,000 over weighted average contribution. Your weighted average contribution, you are now going to weight the contribution using the sales mix. The first one for electric lawnmower is 1,150. You use the sales mix for electric lawnmower is 3. Then you plus the second one, we say the contribution is how much on the second one? It's 1,500. Yes, 1,500. Then you multiply by the sales mix. By the sales mix, then you plus the last one, which is 150 times 1. So let's have the weighted contribution first. Then we can now calculate the break-even units. So the first one is going to give us how much? 1,150 times 3.
3,405.